Hello, hello, welcome everybody. I'm Jev. Yes, Triple V. The accent, by the way, is purely Kiwi. I read old stories for children, so we keep this a family-friendly channel by having bad word blockers, banning bots, and preventing spam. So that means new followers need to wait a few minutes before they can join in the chat. Since these stories are so old, they're now in the public domain, which means they are free to read for anyone and by anyone, the way many Christmas songs are. The digital versions I read are from Project Gutenberg, and you'll find the link for that below. The physical ones are just old books my family has lying around. Sometimes I'll even show them to you. These, by the way, are live reads. Think of them as bedtime stories rather than actual audiobooks. You get the benefits of my mistakes, distractions, explanations, and terrible attempts at accents, along with plenty of chat and interruptions as we find out about things in the story. If you need to do work or chores, then that's fine. Just come and lurk. Please adjust your volume to suit. There are captions available if you have to be quiet or you have hearing challenges, but be warned, sometimes the captions aren't always that accurate. I am a member of the Codex, an awesome group of reading streamers on Twitch. People from many walks of life who share their love of reading, and you'll find links to the Codex reading team and our Discord server below. A special feature of the Codex Discord is the security channel for those of you who stream or moderate. You'll find lots of practical, useful information to help keep your stream and your community safe. So, hang around and come discover adventure with me. You never know what we'll find.
Hello, everybody, and how are you? Oh, look, there's no cat today. I hope you will. I'm just going to turn off the cat cam just a moment because we don't actually need to have that running while he's not there. That was just so it would be on the starting soon screen. Oh my goodness. Oh, that's lovely. Thank you so much for saying that, Joltair. That really does actually make my day. Joltair has just said, oh boy, my favourite show is on. Hello, everyone. I'm so glad you're here. It's lovely to have people to hang out with for whatever reason. And if you can do it in a space where they're doing something you enjoy either participating in or watching, yay. I did actually dig out in tech news, I did dig out my little line of lights that had fallen over the back when I was rearranging after all the Christmas bits and pieces. So that's lovely that that's back on deck and running. Um, One day when I end up with brighter lighting and somehow manage to get my head and my eyes used to being in a brighter lighting space, then these will actually show up better. The reason they look all whited out, even though they're actually quite colourful to me, is because the comparison between how much light they're putting out and how much everything else is doing, because the cameras end up going, oh, that's too bright, and just sort of it can't detect the colour. Whereas if everything is that much brighter, that would actually show colour. It's just the way it works. Anyway, so other technical things, I'm still getting spammy accounts following me on various social media. I do know that that is one of the reasons why some people don't actually use social media, is they don't like that sort of thing. But once you've got your accounts established, unless you're doing something where lots of them want to follow you because they're going to get other followers themselves, generally speaking, you'll just get them coming in dribs and drabs, ones and twos. It's slightly annoying, but you end up with a routine of things you do. So when I get a notification that I have a new follower on X, Twitter, Mastodon, Blue Sky, Facebook, or Instagram, I will go and look at their profile. I will go and see what they look like, how they are behaving, what their channel space looks like. Oh, Goriki says that Joltair is a shining unicorn. That sounds lovely. Thank you. And Goriki says that Jev is a bright champion. Thank you. Feeling a little bit warm and bright today. A little bit shiny. So what you do is you look at your notifications when you get a notification that says someone's followed you, or if they've messaged you, have a look at the message before you actually go and look at their profile. Do not click on anything that's link-like in their messaging or on their profile. Have a look if they've sent you a message and see, is this just an opening gambit before I'm going to try and get you to use my services or follow me on the site that is only for people who are fans, or anything else like that? Or is this actually a genuine person? Are they talking like a real person? Because a lot of bots talk like bots. It's scripted, the same style every time. And this is what we also see here on Twitch in chat, and it's one of the indicators when you do have bots coming in and chatting. You get familiar with the way they phrase things, and it does mean that you can start banning certain portions of what they say, so that when somebody posts something that has that segment of phrase, it won't come through in chat. It means you don't have to deal with it because it's just not coming through. Joltair has said, I've recently started purging socials of bots and such, taking your advice to heart. Thank you. That's lovely to hear it, and well done. That is excellent. One of the reasons I personally have started doing that a while ago is I realized just because they're sitting there having followed me, not doing anything, doesn't mean they're not harvesting my friendships, harvesting the people that I am interacting with, their personal contact details, their social networks, because a lot of the currency of the bot writers, the ones that don't appear to do anything particularly negative. What they do is they gather up. They create files of contacts, and they will sell that file, that list of people, to somebody else who is wanting to do something. And they make their money off selling lists of names and accounts. This is a list of active accounts. I don't care what you're going to do with the list as long as you pay me to use this list. And that's a lot of what the initial ones that follow a lot of people do. Also, if they've never posted anything, I'm a bit sus about that. It's like, why did you join this service? If they say this is their big social account for interacting with people who are fans of theirs elsewhere, and yet they haven't posted anything, or because most of the social media small format stuff is phone based, they will only have as many posts as go just past the bottom of the screen depth, even though and most of those posts will have been posted within 1 week of each other, usually a long time ago. Sometimes there'll be some other stuff. And if you look through those posts, there will not be anything that actually seems real. If it's a hunky dude, slightly older, a little bit of greying at the temples, if he says that he's got an ex-military background, and he has puppies or flowers in some of his pictures, he's fishing. He's wanting to get lonely women to get in touch with him, and then he will put his mates onto them as selling a service. It's a way of making a living. For some people, don't fall for it. You don't need them. They're not genuine interactions. Don't pay for company unless you know what you specifically are paying for. And definitely never, ever, ever pay for followers or subscribers, depending on what terminology is used on where you are on any of the services. Some people might say, oh, it's not actually illegal. Just because it's not actually illegal doesn't mean it's not, that doesn't mean that it's morally right to do. And at some stage, likely they will actually start pulling services from people who are doing that. A lot of the services go through stages, cycles of, we're purging everybody who's on our platform who has sudden influxes of thousands of followers. That's a common one on Twitch, where someone pays for followers. If they're not actually interacting, it doesn't gain you anything. The number of followers you've got doesn't actually increase your viewership on the front page of the category you stream in. So like for me, it's in writing and reading. That what puts me at the top of the list, unless I have my table set to be recently started or something like that, is how many people are actually in my chat at the time, in watching me. That's where viewership kind of helps. But in terms of if you're trying to make a little bit of pocket money off your streaming, you won't make it off people just watching, you make it off people who are chatting. Twitch doesn't count the ones who are just watching if it comes to you making a little bit of money off it, because it's actually to do with interactions. And occasionally purge followers, yes, definitely. I go through my various social medias, and do that. We definitely have that happening here on Twitch. I now have, I think, 101 followers. I used to have 200 and something. I cut it way back. And one of the big reasons why, one of the positive reasons why, is if somebody has never ever come into my channel after following me 5 years ago, they're really not interested in what I'm doing. They're not going to suddenly remember, oh, that old lady who reads books, I'm going to go and hang out in her space, because they won't remember who I am when they look through their list of people that they follow anyway. They will end up searching for me, in which case they'll find me through searching. But I don't want people to receive gifted subscriptions if They have never ever turned up in my channel. If somebody decides when I have an anniversary stream or something like that to dump 25 gifted subs in my channel, I have had that happen. It was like, oh my goodness, what's going on? It was real. For me, because I'm such a small streamer, it felt really weird. But what happens is that Twitch then looks for, because there were not 25 people sitting watching at the time. Yes, talking through the ad. Twitch wasn't actually, I didn't have enough people in there in chat to receive those subs. And so Twitch then starts handing them out to others. Sad, very sad for those who miss out, who are actual normal viewers. I would rather normal viewers get them. And yes, you can catch up on this a little bit on the VOD. Don't forget to watch the ModLearn videos. They really are worth it. Some of the information has been superseded a little bit. And there's things like that. I am actually chatting very occasionally in the background with somebody else who uses a particular service that I don't use, just to find out a little bit more about, is this really quite the way it appears to me from my past experience, or have they actually grown past that stage and have they improved things? Because there is a shortcut service that a lot of people use these days for moderating, and I don't use it. I would rather have Goriki moderating for me, because he does the research and he knows who the real ones are. So yeah, we will get back to this again. And I know I have just been talking through the ads. Oh, 101 followers. Sadly, the Dalmatians aren't public domain yet. Would have been funny. Yes, it would have been funny. Yes, Dodie Smith's books have not become public domain yet. And I would guess that they're quite a bit different to what most of us are familiar with, because most of us are familiar with the Disney movie and book versions based on Disney movie, like Disney books. There's quite a few stories like that. I used to think that Swiss Family Robinson was fabulous. I loved it. I've been to Disneyland in Anaheim and loved the tree house. Fabulous. Everybody wants that tree house. It's lots of fun, except, there's lots of people there because you're at Disneyland, and it's like, I want the tree house, but I don't want the people. And all that sort of stuff. But then you start reading the book and you go, oh my goodness, this is nothing like what I remember. That's because most of what most of us remember is heavily abridged for children, or it is Disney. And the original story is not a very pleasant story. The characters in it, there is, apart from Mother, there are no endearing characters in it. The attitudes of Father and the boys are really not, for me personally, not acceptable anymore. I know that lives have changed. I know that styles have changed. I know that society has changed. We have different attitudes and values. But it was just overwhelming for me, and I rage quit that book. So yeah, there's a lot of stories that, especially earlier on, not so much these days, but in my earlier days of reading, where people come to them familiar with them from a Disney version, and it's quite interesting sometimes the responses you have from stories that you're finally actually hearing a fairly early version of the story, maybe the original version or a translation of the original, because I don't read German or French or any of those other ones. I only read English because I can only speak English. And I promise I'm speaking Kiwi English even if captions doesn't believe me. Joltaire says, me reading the Hans Christian Andersen stories and then seeing the Disney movies, they're just so different. Yes. And not necessarily what we would consider to be child friendly or pleasant. We've got another friend, Alcommutation, who reads the Grimm fairy tales on, I think, on his Fridays. It's usually Saturday for me, Fairy Tale Fridays. and they just, I mean, they do everyone's head in, but they really do his head in. Some of the things that go on in some of those grim tales are very grim and nasty things. And I have heard that the Hans Christian Andersen ones can be a bit like that too. Oh my goodness. I wonder, I've got a family member who's over in Denmark at the moment, and I wonder if they can actually get to see the Little Mermaid statue, because that's where they are, I think. I can't remember. I think that is. I had this sudden, yes, definitely, that's where it is. And now the other part of my brain is going, is it? Really? Are you sure about that? You've just told everybody it is. Maybe. 100%. Yeah, definitely. Thank you. Thank you for that vote of confidence. Anyway, we're going to carry on with Jack and Jill, A Village Story by Louisa May Alcott, first published in 1880. Why does it say GB up there? She's US. I don't. Aladdin and Pinocchio. Yeah, just so different. So different. Aladdin. What nationality do you feel that the story of Aladdin is? I'm just going to change this here. Where is it? Book info. There it is. Book info. And we're just going to take the GB, the erroneous GB, out and leave it at that for now. And I will put the US one back in sometime. There you go. Yeah, Aladdin and Pinocchio. Oh my goodness. The Pinocchio one, I was kind of expecting it to be like that, because the Disney Pinocchio I never really got particularly wrapped up in, and I think I probably came across a reasonably authentic retelling of it at some stage when I was growing up. Not the same level of detail, but of Pinocchio. But yeah, very definitely not the stuff that most of us used to. Grim fairy tales are just the tip of the iceberg of gruesome German children's stories. There are far more disturbing ones. And also with the Grimm's ones, it depends on which of their own editions it is. Their very first edition is really rough. Hair curling, teeth grating. Oh my goodness. It was, a lot of that sort of thing was written back in the day where let's scare people into being well behaved. Our friend Alcott Mutation, yeah, has been streaming Grim Tales. That's the one. Oh, thank you for putting in his link there. That's wonderful. He also does Smilecore, which is, how do you describe it? It's a type of metal. He alone does Smilecore. That's what his chat has named his musical style. Something or other metal. I can't remember what I heard him describe it as. It's a particular style of metal music where it's got lots of distortion on it, lots of fuzz on it. That's very, very satisfying. And so when you're not catching him reading, he will be playing music, and that's also wonderful. So definitely go and follow him. So we are going to read this. We are going to read Jack and Jill, who now no longer have the UK tag on there, GB for Great Britain, even though it's UK. We are reading Chapter 7, Jill's Mission. That's right, Jill was saying that she and the girls were going to try and get people to be more considerate towards each other or something. The girls were going to be more considerate and do things to be more helpful instead of just taking things for granted. I think that's what it was. The good times began immediately, and very little studying was done that week. That's right. Jill and Jack were intending to catch up on schoolwork because they were a bit behind with their injuries and not going to school. The good times began immediately, and very little studying was done that week, in spite of the virtuous resolutions made by certain young persons on Christmas Day. But resolutions on Christmas Day? I thought that was meant to be New Year's. I don't know. But dear me, how was it possible to settle down to lessons in the delightful bird room with not only its own charms to distract one, but all the new gifts to enjoy, and a dozen calls a day to occupy one's time? Visits. Calls, not telephone calls. No, people visiting. I guess we'd better wait till the others are at school and just go in for fun this week, said Jack, who was in great spirits. I'm so glad you put that in there, Koriki. I'm really pleased that you put that in as a command. Jeff is not picking boogers. She's adjusting a nose piercing, which is providing some form of physical distraction. Yes. Sometimes it's also because I know that visually it's distracting others because there's a shiny bit that pokes down and it distracts other people. So I'll poke it up to get it out of the way. I know I should do it in a more polite manner behind my hand or a handkerchief or something like that, but it's not going to happen if I have to do it properly every time. So it's doesn't happen, or we just deal with it. This one is an itchy nose. Excuse me. And the reason why I do mention that sort of thing, like itchy noses, is because when I was growing up, you didn't rub your nose in front of anybody. It was very rude. And that was so hard. It was so difficult not when there was anyone else around as a kid. And by the way, have some water. We all need it. We haven't done tips. Let's have some tips before we read further. Tips, vid. Oh, have we got today? Raccoons.
Hello. My name is Raccoon Zed. In Zed. That's right. 3 C's and 3 O's. Ha. So, welcome to the stream. We have many tips for you to help enjoy the stream. Number 1. Have a drink. I like water. As soon as my human helps me out here. So, another part of that is when I hydrate, when I take a drink, you do too. You can indicate that you've done so by giving a thumbs up or use the water bottle emoji down in chat. Number 3, sure, why not? Food or snacks? I don't have any right now, but you eat whatever you'd like to eat. Maybe it's a whole meal, maybe it's a snack. I don't know. You do you. Number 4, get comfy. You can wrap up in something. Thanks, human. That's more like it. Grab a pillow. Maybe you've got a fidget toy you can play with. But do anything you like to be comfy. You could even have, I don't know, maybe your favorite human will give you scritches. Hey, human. That's right. Give me scritches. Yeah, that's right there. Yeah. No, don't touch the floof. Next, we have number 5, something to write with or write on. Hey, I can't reach the pad. There you go. And I need something to write on. I just said something to write. Oh wait, that's something to write on. I need something to write with. Okay. Okay, so I don't have opposable thumbs, but you do. Write memos down. You might need to remember something. Maybe not right now, but maybe after the stream. Number 6. Get involved. Join in chat. Chat in chat. Use commands. Play bingo because, that lady says some pretty crazy things from time to time. Make clips. You can even have them featured. Maybe we can see your clips someday. Spin the pages, which are like right down there somewhere. They look like a book or something. The thing down there with a number under chat. And just do whatever you can to enjoy chat. Thanks for watching.
Yes, I am topping up my drinking glass, not my water bottle. And I have some lemon and pyroa, New Zealand drink. No branding shown on site, not on camera. just because we're trying not to, since I don't have them sponsoring me. Right, I probably will one day do another bunch of food bits and pieces type stream, just to sort of share about some very specifically New Zealand things, because there are different people who hang out now than what used to be here a number of years ago, because life has moved on. You know, we're not in the middle of the lockdown aspect of the COVID pandemic. So I probably will go through a bunch of what different foods are from New Zealand at some stage. Ones that, to me, I'm aware are unique, relatively uniquely New Zealand items, but to other people they might be sort of like, huh, what's that? So that one in particular, lemon and pyroa, it's originally started off as a mineral water from a particular location, the little town of Pyroa, Paeroa. I think it might be a Maori name, I'm not sure. And they used to put lemon juice and sugar in it to have with it, and it had this pleasant flavour, and so it actually, the town became known for it, and then they started making it as a widely available drink. I mean, now I think it's just normal water that they use in the process of making it, plus the flavouring for the lemon and everything else, but it's quite pleasant. We used to have students that were from either Germany or Japan who would go to our local secondary school. They'd be over here for 6 months. They'd live with us while they were going to the school. And initially they were a little bit, because a lot of the kids look for things they are familiar with. Now, they might know that they can't get their own stuff from back home here, the stuff that is specific to their country. So at the time, they may not have been able to get this melon soda here in New Zealand. This is Japanese. It usually looks more like that. And that's got an ingredients list in English because it's been imported into New Zealand. I know this is a brand, but I'm actually talking about something. So the Japanese boys would look for something like this, but it wasn't available because back then it wasn't. It's quite some time ago now. Now I can get this at the sushi place. And no, it's not really Japanese well done sushi. It's just, it's pleasant, it's nice, it's based off California roll style sushi for most of it. Anyway, so initially they would go for things that were familiar that weren't necessarily from their own country, such as Coca-Cola brand cola drink, because they were familiar with it. They had seen it when they were back home. So some of them, we just encouraged them, look, try out some of the more local things. Or they would be out with New Zealand school mates and the others would be drinking something, so they'd try it. By the time they went home, we had some of them who the last month that they were here, every week they would come home with several large bottles of one of those drinks, because especially that drink, because they wanted to make sure they had plenty of it before they left, because they weren't going to be able to get it when they got back home. They were trying to make sure they didn't miss out too soon. Just one of those things. You become attached to certain things when you live in a different country for a while and you try out those things in that country. You may not like everything, but there are some things that you may actually decide, oh, I quite like that. So yeah, it's been one of those amusing things. And having had students living with us, boarding with us, it's actually been quite good for us to actually realise, yeah, we do things differently because we're New Zealand. Anyway, so let's get on with this. We're going to read this story. Chapter 7, Jill's Mission. I'm not starting from the beginning again. It's only one paragraph, but we don't need to start it right from the beginning. I guess we'd better wait until the others... Oh yeah, something about a dozen calls a day to occupy one's time, they being visitors. I guess we'd better wait till the others are at school and just go in for fun this week, said Jack. So it's school holidays, but these two are not going to be able to go to school because they're stuck at home in bed. Who was in great spirits at the prospect of getting up, for the splints were off his leg, and he hoped to be promoted to crutches very soon. I shall keep my speller, by me and take a look at it every day, for that is what I'm most backward in. But I intend to devote myself to you, Jack, and be real kind and useful. I've made a plan to do it, and I mean to carry it out in any way, answered Jill, who had begun to be a missionary and felt that this was a field of labour where she could distinguish herself. Oh dear, the ought tos. Here's a home mission all ready for you, and you can be paying your debts besides doing yourself good, Mrs. Peck had said to her in private, having found plenty to do herself, because Mrs. Peck, her mother, and Jill are now living in Jack's family home. They've been invited to come and live there with them. And so her mother has said, let's not be a burden, let's see if we can contribute in some way. Jack is a really sporting sort of a kid, and so Jill has decided she's going to help him with some stuff that he's not so good at, as part of her way of paying her way. Now, Jill made one great mistake at the outset. She forgot that she was the one to be converted to good manners and gentleness, and devoted her efforts to looking after Jack, finding it much easier to cure other people's faults than her own. Ain't that the truth? We see what's wrong in other people when we like to point it out, rather than seeing what's our own issues and dealing with it. Jack was a most engaging heathen and needed very little instruction. Therefore, Jill thought her task to be an easy one. But 3 or 4 weeks of petting and play had rather demoralised both children. That's people just sort of making a fuss of them. Not the modern use of that word. We're not going to go there, okay? Had rather demoralised both children, so Jill's spiller, though tucked under the sofa pillow every day, was seldom looked at, so she didn't do her schoolwork, but she said she was going to practice. And Jack shirked his Latin shamefully. Both read all the storybooks they could get, held daily levees in the bird room. I have no idea what that is. I thought a levee was like a bank around a river to stop it flooding the land nearby, you know. The Day the Music Died, doesn't that talk about the levees? The song? That's down by the river. What's a levee? I don't know. Levee. And all their spare minutes were spent in teaching Snowdrop, the great Angora cat, to bring the ball when they dropped it in their game. So Saturday came, and both were rather the worse for so much idleness, since daily duties and studies are the wholesome bread which feeds the mind. Better than the dyspeptic plum cake of sensational reading or the unsubstantial bonbons of frivolous amusement. So Ms. Alcott is giving us food equivalents to certain activities as their value to us. It was a stormy day, so they had few callers and devoted themselves to arranging the album, for these books were all the rage just then, and boys met to compare, discuss, buy, sell, and swap stamps with as much interest as men on change, that's the exchange, the stock exchange, gamble in stocks. Jack had a nice little collection and had been saving up pocket money to buy a book in which to preserve his treasures. Now, thanks to Jill's timely suggestion, Frank had given him a fine one, and several friends had contributed a number of rare stamps to grace the large, inviting pages. Jill wielded the gum brush and fitted on the little flaps as her fingers were skilful at this nice work, and Jack put each stamp in its proper place with great rustling of leaves and comparing of marks. Returning after a brief absence, Mrs. Minot beheld the countenances of the workers adorned with gay stamps, giving them a very curious appearance. So, pasting on the little flaps. These days we have pre-gummed stamp hinges. So that's what they're using. And the stamp hinges these days, when I was a kid, which is still a long time ago, they were little wee glassine tabs of paper. Glassine is a particular type of paper. And it had the sort of wet it and it sticks gum on the back of it. And so you'd fold them in half-ish, wet one side, put it on the back of the stamp, and then you'd wet the other side and put it on the page. Now, a really serious stamp collector doesn't do that, because when you do that, you are potentially going to damage the back of the stamp with something that is not acid-free and safe archival material. And so they will actually have stamp albums which have little pockets in rows where you sit the stamps into these little pockets. And how do I know this? Because I had a relative who used to be an in-law relative who was a serious stamp collector. Although when I was a kid, I had actually had a stamp album and put some stamps in it. I got to the stage where it's like, I'm not getting any from there. I don't know how to get any from there. And if you bought a packet of used stamps from somewhere, because you could, they would have lots and lots and lots of everything that you already had because they were easy to get. And then you might have one in the packet that was appealing, and that might be the one that you had just seen a glimpse of in the packet before, because you weren't allowed to open them before you bought them. And so you'd bought it hoping there was going to be more, and it was a bit of a have, really. It's like, yeah. One way to get the kids to spend all their pocket money, I guess. Sorry, I've just taken the scab off an itchy bite and rubbed my fingers across the area, so it's a bit messy. Anyway, let's ignore that. We have mosquitoes at the moment because it's summer in New Zealand. Oh, joy. Not. Right, stamp albums. My dears, what new play have you got now? Are you wild Indians, or letters that have gone round the world before finding the right address? She asked, laughing at the ridiculous sight, for both were as sober as judges and deeply absorbed in some doubtful specimen, because the description we've just had is that they actually had stamps stuck on them. They were adorned with stamps, giving them a very curious appearance. Oh, we just stuck them there to keep them safe. They get lost if we leave them lying around. It's very handy, for I can see in a minute what I want on Jill's face and she on mine. Now, that is not something I've ever thought of doing. But then I haven't done stamp album work. I haven't done stamp collecting with others. It's a very solitary sport. And we put our fingers on the right chap at once. In other words, we can see the stamp we want so we can grab it, answered Jack, adding with an anxious gaze at his friend's variegated countenance, where the dickens is my new Granada? It's rare and I wouldn't lose it for $1. Why, there it is, on your own nose. Don't you remember you put it there because you said mine was not big enough to hold it? Laughed Jill, tweaking a large orange square off the round nose of her neighbour, causing it to wrinkle up in a droll way, the nose, as the gum made the operation slightly painful. So I did, and gave you little Bolivar on yours. Now I'll have Alsace and Lorraine, 1870. There are 7 of them, so hold still and see how you like it, returned Jack, picking the large pale stamps one by one from Jill's forehead, which they crossed like a band. Sounds like you're having fun there, Goriki. Is this something I'm meant to be aware of? I don't know. Anyway, she bore it without flinching, saying to herself with a secret smile as she glanced at the hot fire. Oh, yes, I see what you're doing. As she glanced at the hot fire, which scorched her as if she kept near enough to Jack to help him. This really is being like a missionary with a tattooed savage to look after, because tattoos weren't common back then. Sailors, I think, were it. Oh, that's a lot of bots to have banned. Remind me to tell you about one particular probably dodgy user that I haven't seen, but others are talking about online elsewhere. Or you might have seen it. Zach posted about it on X Twitter, and so he's probably spoken about it in his streams this morning. Except you wouldn't have seen that, you would have been at work. Sorry about that. Let's carry on. Sorry, what I'm referring to is that there is a user engaged in slightly wrong behavior for Twitch, but doing it a lot in lots of different channels, i.e. they are live and streaming while they're hanging out in other people's chat, and the expectation, that's the little bit that I've seen so far. There's other stuff as well. The expectation is that if they hang out and chat in someone else's chat, that they'll go over to his channel instead. And yeah, no, you don't go stealing other people's viewers. Just like you don't go re-streaming someone else's stream unless that person has given you permission to. That has happened to me, and thank you very much to Goriki for actually spotting that and getting that dealt with. Yeah. Some people just have no conscience. They like to get upset if stuff happens to them, but they don't really care if they do it to other people. Anyway, let's carry on. Oh, so tattooed people are savages, and they need missions work done at them. No. I have to suffer a little, as the good folks did, who got speared and roasted sometimes. So she's talking about people who go from America, England, other countries that are Western countries, to primitive countries where there's still cannibalism going on, or they don't like foreigners coming into their country, so they'll attack them back in the old days. Bit earlier than my day and age, but I have been to Papua New Guinea, and while we were up in the highlands of Papua New Guinea visiting a village which had Europeans there, we were meeting some of the locals and some of the old people, probably about my age now. I was a lot younger back then. So it was within a generation's time. We're actually talking about what it tasted like. They had been a cannibalistic region. And so they were actually, they still remembered. Yeah. Definitely, that's a good one. Jilter has affirmed Goriki as a great gleaming champion, and Goriki says, darn straight, and Jilter says, for being a good bot blocking mod. Yeah, excellent. I love it. I really, really do appreciate it. And I also appreciate other streamers who do things like that to make sure that their space is a safe space. So let's carry on with the story. So yeah, she's talking about people who've been missionaries to cannibals and other people who don't want visitors who are not like them. We get a bit like that these days, but not quite the same way. And also, Westerners have always tended to think that we are the pinnacle of society, therefore anyone who is not as advanced socially as we are is beneath us. We need to go and bring them up to our level rather than us going and learning off them. Yeah, pretty self-centered view, but that's the way it is. Where are we up to? I have to suffer a little, as the good folks did who got speared and roasted sometimes, but I won't complain a bit, though my forehead smarts. My arms are tired and one cheek is as red as fire. The Roman states make a handsome page, don't they? Asked Jack. He's talking about a series of stamps on one page in his book. Little dreaming of the part he was playing in Jill's mind, so that's what she was thinking, not what she was saying about being a missionary to the the savages. Oh, I say, isn't Corea a beauty? Corea. I think it must have been somewhere in what's now Italy. I'm ever so proud of that. And he gazed fondly on a big blue stamp, the sole ornament of one page. I don't think it's the country of Korea, Korea, because this is spelt with a C, but it might have been. I don't know. It's just because it was referred to straight after the Roman states. I don't see why the Cape of Good Hope has pyramids. They ought to go in Egypt. The Sandwich Islands are all right, with heads of the black kings and queens on them. Is that the Moai? The big volcanic stone statues of the people standing there looking out to sea or looking inwards. Actually, they're now considering them to be markers for water sources. The Sandwich Islands are all right, with heads of the black kings and queens on them, said Jill, feeling that they were very appropriate for her private play. Yes, countries of Savages. Turkey has crescents, Australia swans, and Spain women's heads with black bars across them. Frank says it's because they keep women shut up so, but that was only his fun. I'd rather have a good honest green United States with Washington on it, or a blue one centre with old Franklin than all their eagles and lions and kings and queens put together, added the Democratic boy with a disrespectful slap on a crowned head as he settled Heligoland in its place. Do you know anything about Heligoland? Do you know where it is? The swans in Australia. They do have swans. They have native swans. They are black swans. Whereas most of the swans that most of us are familiar with are white. So black swans are originally from Australia. I don't know why Australia has black swans, but they do. We've got them in New Zealand. We've had them in New Zealand for a long time, but they're not native to New Zealand. They came over from Australia. Strange. So he's saying, much as he's got all these fancy stamps from everywhere, he'd rather a few boring old American ones. I don't know. I think he's feeling a little bit threatened by the rest of the world or something. It's odd. Why does Austria have Mercury on the stamp, I wonder? Do they wear helmets like that? Asked Jill with the brush handle in her mouth as she cut a fresh batch of flaps. Oh, they're actually having to create their own stamp hinges. Maybe he was postman to the gods, so he's put on stamps now. The Prussians wear helmets, but they have spikes like the old Roman fellas. I like Prussians ever so much. They fight splendidly and always beat. Austrians have a handsome uniform, though. So the Prussians he's talking about are the ones that became what we now think of as Germans, because Germany is a fairly new nation. So he's talking about the Pickelhaube, or Pickelhaus, whichever way it's said, which is the Imperial German helmet with the spike on top. Talking of Romans reminds me that I have not heard your Latin for 2 days. Finally, schoolwork. Although technically this should be associated with geography, what they're doing with the stamps. I have not heard your Latin for 2 days. Come, lazy bones, brace up and let us have it now. I've done my compo, that's her composition, and shall have just time before I go out for a tramp with Gus, said, it's him talking to her, said Frank, putting by a neat page to dry, for he'd studied every day like a conscientious lad as he was. Don't know it. Not going to try till next week. Grind away over your old Greek as much as you like, but don't bother me, answered Jack. Oh, hang on. Frank's the brother. I thought it was just the kids at home, not the siblings. But don't bother me, answered Jack, frowning at the mere thought of the detested lesson. But Frank adored his Xenophon. Xenophon? Author in Latin? And would not see his old friend Caesar neglected without an effort to defend him, so he confiscated the gum pot and effectually stopped the stamp business by whisking away at one fell swoop all that lay on Jill's table. Now then, young man, you will quit this sort of nonsense and do your lesson, or you won't see these fellows again in a hurry. You asked me to hear you, and I'm going to do it. Here's the book. Frank's tone was a dictatorial one, which Jack hated and always found hard to obey, especially when he knew he ought to do it. Usually when his patience was tried, he strode about the room or ran off for a race around the garden, coming back breathless but good-tempered. Because for some people, when they get tight inside, you need to get out there and do something really physical to get that out of your system, and then you come back and you're happy or in a better mood. But now both of these vents for irritation was denied him, and he had fallen into the way of throwing things about in a temper. He longed to send Caesar to perpetual banishment in the fire blazing close by, but resisted the temptation and answered honestly, though gruffly, I know I did, but I don't see any use in pouncing on a fellow when he isn't ready. I haven't got my lesson and don't mean to worry about it, so you may just give me back my things and go about your business. So he's not very happy about that, is he? I'll give you back a stamp for every perfect lesson you get, and you won't see them on any other terms. And thrusting the treasures into his pocket, Frank caught up his rubber boots and went off swinging them like a pair of clubs, feeling that he would give a trifle to be able to use them on his lazy brother. At this high-handed proceeding and the threat which accompanied it, Jack's patience gave out, and catching up Caesar as he thought, sent him flying after the retreating tyrant with the defiant declarations, "Keep them then, and your old book too. I won't look at it till you give all my stamps back and say you're sorry. So now." It was all over before Mamma could interfere, or Jill do more than clutch and cling to the gum brush. Frank vanished unharmed, but the poor book dashed against the wall, to fall half open on the floor, its gay cover loosened, and its smooth leaves crushed by the blow. "It's the album! Oh, Jack, how could you?" cried Jill, dismayed at the sight of the precious book, so maltreated by the owner. He thought he'd thrown the school book, and he hadn't. Mood, me during Latin lessons when Cicero's sentences wouldn't end. I can imagine. I have not done Latin lessons, but I can imagine. Definitely. Thought it was the other. Guess it isn't hurt much. Didn't mean to hit him anyway. He does provoke me so, muttered Jack, very red and shamefaced, as his mother picked up the book and laid it silently on the table before him. He did not know what to do with himself and was thankful for the stamps still left to him, finding great relief in making faces as he plucked them one by one from his mortified countenance, because he's still got them stuck on his face. Jill looked on, half glad, half sorry that her savage showed such signs of unconverted ferocity. And Mrs. Minot went on writing letters, wearing the grave look her sons found harder to bear than another person's scolding. So Jill's happy that she still gets to improve him, I think. No one spoke for a moment, and the silence was becoming awkward when Gus appeared in a rubber suit, bringing a book to Jack from Laura and a note to Jill from Lottie. Excuse me a moment, I'm going to sneeze. I think that's it. Sorry, not quite enough time to mute it. And a note to Jill from Lottie. "Look here, you just trundle me into my den, please. I'm going to have a nap. It's so dull today, I don't feel like doing much," said Jack, when Gus had done his errands, trying to look as if he knew nothing about the car. Jack folded his arms and departed like a warrior born from the battlefield to be chafed unmercifully for a pepper pot, while Gus made him comfortable in his own room. "I heard once of a boy who threw a fork at his brother and put his eye out, but he didn't mean to, and the brother forgave him, and he never did so any more," observed Jill in a pensive tone, wishing to show she felt all the dangers of impatience, but was sorry for the culprit. "Did the boy ever forgive himself?" asked Mrs. Minot. "No, I suppose not, but Jack didn't hit Frank and feels real sorry, I know. He might have, and hurt him very much. Our actions are in our own hands, but the consequences of them are not. It's not always us who bears the consequences of what we choose to do. Remember that, my dear, and think twice before you do anything." "Yes'm, I will," and Jill composed herself to consider what missionaries usually did when the natives hurled tomahawks and boomerangs at one another and defied the rulers of the land. Yeah, no, we're not going to talk about colonialism. Mrs. Minot wrote one page of a new letter, then stopped, pushed her papers about, thought a little, and finally got up, saying, as if she found it impossible to resist the yearning of her heart for the naughty boy, "I'm going to see if Jack is covered up. He's so helpless and liable to take cold. Don't stir till I come back." "No, I won't." The is ma'am, shortened, super abbreviated. Away went the tender parent to find her son studying Caesar for dear life, and all the more amiable for the little gust which had blown away the temporary irritability. The brothers were often called Thunder and Lightning, because Frank lowered and growled and was a good while clearing up, while Jack's temper came and went like a flash, and the air was all the clearer for the escape of dangerous electricity. Of course, Mamma had to stop and deliver a little lecture, illustrated by sad tales of petulant boys and punctuated with kisses, which took off the edge of these afflicting narratives. Jill meantime meditated morally on the superiority of her own good temper over the hasty one of her dear playmate. "Yeah, you're not perfect, girl. Don't start Pride comes before a fall, you know. And just when she was feeling unusually uplifted and secure, alas, like so many of us, she fell in the most deplorable manner. I did not read ahead, and when I said pride comes before a fall. Glancing about the room for something to do, she saw a sheet of paper lying exactly out of reach, where it had fluttered from the table, unperceived. At first her eye rested on it as carelessly as it did on the stray stamp that Frank had dropped. Then, as if one thing suggested the other, she took it into her head that the paper was Frank's composition, or better still, a note to Annette, for the two corresponded when absence or weather prevented the daily meeting at school. Wouldn't it be fun to keep it till he gives back Jack's stamps? She thought. It would plague him so if it was a note, and I do believe it is, for the compos don't begin with 2 words on one side. I'll get it, and Jack and I will plan some way to pay him off. Cross thing. Forgetting her promise not to stir, having a bruised or maybe fractured spine, she should not be trying to get around. Also, how dishonourable it was to read other people's letters. Jill caught up the long-handled hook, often in use now, and tried to pull the paper nearer. It would not come at once, for a seam in the carpet held it, and Jill feared to tear or crumple it if she was not very careful. The hook was rather heavy and long for her to manage, and Jack usually did the fishing, so she was not very skilful, and just as she was giving a particularly quick jerk, she lost her balance, fell off the sofa, and dropped the pole with a bang. So she might be re-injuring herself. "Oh, my back!" was all she could think or say as she felt the jar all through her little body, and a corresponding fear in her guilty little mind that someone would come and find out the double mischief she had been at. For a moment she lay quite still to recover from the shock. Then, as the pain passed, she began to wonder how she should get back, and looked about her to see if she could do it alone. She thought she could, as the sofa was near, and she had improved so much that she could sit up a little if the doctor would have let her. He's probably not letting her for a reason. He's probably wanting her back to heal properly, and she's just undone that. And she's going to undo it even more. She was gathering herself together for the effort when, within arm's reach now, she saw the tempting paper and seized it with glee, for in spite of her predicament, she did want to tease Frank. A glance showed it was not the composition, nor a note, but the beginning of a letter from Mrs. Minot to her sister. And Jill was about to lay it down when her own name caught her eye, and she could not resist reading it. Hard words to write of one so young, doubly hard to read, and impossible to forget. Oh dear. Dear Lizzie, Jack continues to do very well and will soon be up again, but we begin to fear that the little girl is permanently injured in the back. She is here, and we do our best for her, but I never look at her without thinking of Lucinda Snow, who, you remember, was bedridden for 20 years owing to a fall at 15. Poor little Janey does not know yet, and I hope, there it ended, and poor little Janey's punishment for disobedience began that instant. She thought she was getting well because she did not suffer all the time, and everyone spoke cheerfully about by and by. Now she knew the truth, and shut her eyes with a shiver as she said low to herself, 20 years! I couldn't bear it! I couldn't bear it! A very miserable Jill lay on the floor, and for a while did not care who came and found her. Then the last words of the letter, I hope, seemed to shine across the blackness of the dreadful 20 years, and cheer her up a bit, for despair never lives long in young hearts, and Jill was a brave child. That is why Mammy sighs so when she dresses me, and everyone is so good to me. Perhaps Mrs. Minot does not really know after all. She's dreadfully scared about Jack, and he is getting well. I'd like to ask Doctor, but he might find out about that letter. Oh dear, why didn't I keep still and let the horrid thing alone? As she thought that, Jill pushed the paper away, pulled herself up, and with much painful effort managed to get back to her sofa, where she laid herself down with a groan, feeling as if the 20 years had already passed over her since she had tumbled off. And in modern medical terms, she's probably doing more damage than just lying on the floor and waiting for someone to pick her up would have done. By a long shot. I don't know if that's how the story's going to go, though. I've told a lie, for I said I wouldn't stir. I've hurt my back, I've done a mean thing, and I've got paid for it. A nice missionary I am. I'd better begin at home, as Mammy told me to. And Jill groaned again, remembering her mother's words. Now I've got another secret to keep all alone, for I'd be ashamed to tell the girls. I guess I'll turn around and study my spelling. Then no one will see my face. Jill looked the picture of a good, industrious child as she lay with her back to the large table. PJ's saying hi to everybody. Actually, yes, I will have one. I only had one today. Thank you. You can see why I've got the emotes I've got, like that. Jultair says hi. Jultair, one of my chat. They regularly come and listen. Let's carry on. As she lay with her back to the large table, her book held so that nothing was to be seen but one cheek and a pair of lips moving busily. Fortunately, it is difficult for little sinners to act a part, and even if the face is hidden, something in the body seems to betray the internal remorse and shame. Usually, Jill lay flat and still. Now her back was bent in a peculiar way as she leaned over her book, and one foot wagged nervously, while on the visible cheek was a Spanish stamp with a woman's face looking through the black bars, very suggestively, if she had known it. How long the minutes seemed till once someone came, and what a queer little jump her heart gave when Mrs. Minot's voice said cheerfully, "Jack is all right, and I declare so is Jill. I really believe there is a telegraph still working somewhere between you two, and each knows what the other is about without words." "I didn't have any other book handy, so I thought I'd study a while," answered Jill, feeling that she deserved no praise for her seeming industry. She cast a sidelong glance as she spoke, and seeing that Mrs. Minot was looking for the letter, hid her face and lay so still she could hear the rustle of the paper as it was taken from the floor. Oh my goodness. So many troubles that could be avoided if people were honest and things like that. Let's carry on. It was well she did not also see the quick look the lady gave her as she turned the letter and found a red stamp sticking to the underside. For this unlucky little witness told the story. Mrs. Minot remembered having seen the stamp lying close to the sofa when she left the room, for she had had half a mind to take it to Jack, but did not, thinking Frank's plan had some advantages. She also recollected that a paper flew off the table, but being in haste she had not stopped to see what it was. Now the stamp and the letter could hardly have come together without hands, for they lay a yard apart, and here also, on the unwritten portion of the page, was the mark of a small green thumb. Jill had been winding wool for a stripe in her new afghan, and the green ball lay on her sofa. These signs suggested and confirmed what Mrs. Minot did not want to believe. So did the voice, attitude, and air of Jill, very unlike her usual open, alert ways. The kind lady could easily forgive the reading of her letter, since the girl had found such sad news there. But the dangers of disobedience were serious in her case, and a glance showed that she was suffering either in mind or body, perhaps both. "I will wait for her to tell me. She is an honest child, and the truth will soon come out," thought Mrs. Minot as she took a clean sheet, and Jill tried to study. "Shall I hear your lesson, dear? Jack means to recite his like a good boy, so suppose you follow his example," she said presently. "I don't know as I can say it, but I'll try." Jill did try, and got on bravely until she came to the word permanent. There she hesitated, remembering where she saw it last. "Do you know what that means?" asked her teacher, thinking to help her on by defining the word. "Always, for a great while, or something like that, doesn't it?" faltered Jill, with a tight feeling in her throat, and the colour coming up as she tried to speak easily, yet felt so shame-stricken she could not. "Are you in pain, my child? Never mind the lesson. Tell me, and I'll do something for you." The kind words, the soft hand on her hot cheek, and the pity in the eyes that looked at her were too much for Jill. A sob came first, and then the truth, told with hidden face and tears that washed the blush away and set free the honest little soul that could not hide its fault from such a friend. "I knew it all before and was sure you would tell me, else you would not be the child I love and like to help so much." Then, while she soothed Jill's trouble, Mrs. Minot told her story and showed the letter, wishing to lessen, if possible, some part of the pain it had given. "Sly old stamp, to go and tell on me when I meant to own up and get some credit if I could, after being so mean and bad," said Jill, smiling through her tears, when she saw the telltale witness against her. "You had better stick it in your book to remind you of the bad consequences of disobedience. Then perhaps this lesson will leave a permanent impression on your mind and memory," answered Mrs. Minot, glad to see her natural gaiety coming back, and hoping she had forgotten the contents of the unfortunate letter. But she had not, and presently, when the sad affair had been talked over and forgiven, Jill asked slowly, as she tried to put on a brave look, "Please tell me about Lucinda Snow. If I am to be like her, I might as well know how she managed to bear it so long." "I'm sorry you ever heard of her, and yet perhaps it may help you to bear your trial, dear, which I hope will never be as heavy as a one as hers. This Lucinda I knew for years, and though at first I thought her fate the saddest that could be, I came at last to see how happy she was in spite of her affliction. How good and useful and beloved." "Why, how could she be? What did she do?" cried Jill, forgetting her own troubles, to look up with an open, eager face again. "She was so patient, other people were ashamed to complain of their small worries, so cheerful that her own great one grew lighter." You are keeping busy there, Goriki. But thank you so much for doing that. I do really, really appreciate that. So cheerful that her own one grew. Oh, she was so patient, other people were ashamed to complain of their small worries. So cheerful that her own great one grew lighter. So industrious that she made both money and friends by pretty things she worked. Needlework, things like that. Needlework, sewing, crochet. And sold to her many visitors, and best of all, so wise and sweet that she seemed to get good out of everything, and made her poor room a sort of chapel where people went for comfort, counsel, and an example of a pious life. So you see, Lucinda was not so very miserable after all. I think the hard part would actually... Thank you so much. Here's my coffee. Thank you, sir. So I've got LMP and coffee. Yum. Not together, but it's nice to have a variety of things that we can drink. So you see, Lucinda was not so very miserable after all, and I was thinking, if you were restricted in movement but not in pain all the time, it would probably help, especially if you had been in pain, so you had this comparison. I'm so glad I'm not in the same place I was before, sort of thing. Well, if I could be as I was, I'd like to be a woman like that. If I could not be as I was, back to being healthy again, I'd like to be a woman like that, only I hope I shall not, answered Jill thoughtfully at first, then coming out so decidedly with the last words that it was evident the life of a bedridden saint was not at all to her mind. "So do I, and I mean to believe that you will not. Meantime, we can try to make the waiting as useful and pleasant as possible. This painful little back will be a sort of conscience to remind you of what you ought to do and leave undone, and so you can be learning obedience. Then, when the body is strong, it will have formed a good habit to make duty easier, and my Lucinda can be a sweet example even while lying here, if she chooses. Can I? And Jill's eyes were full of softer tears as the comfortable, cheering words sank into her heart, to blossom slowly by and by into her life, for this was to be a long lesson, hard to learn, but very useful in the years to come. Maybe she gets some movement back, but not full movement. I don't know. When the boys returned after the Latin was recited and peace restored, Jack showed her a recovered stamp, promptly paid by Frank, who was as just as he was severe. And Jill asked for the old red one, though she did not tell why she wanted it, nor show it put away in the spelling book, a little seal upon a promise made to be kept. Quote, he's pulling up quotes of things I've said before. How to desecrate in 5 easy lessons. Yeah, I'm feeling like we need a little bit of desecration with all this moralizing going on at the moment. Anyway, usually our stories are a little bit more middle of the road in their tone, not quite so pious. I'd forgotten that Miss Alcott could be a little bit pious in her manner. A streaming malarkey is a good excuse for getting stuff, said me one time, and it's now a permanent quote. I was joking about some gifts that I had been given, one of which is sitting right here. This is a storm cloud. It's a weather glass. And at the moment, there's nothing in it except for the liquid. That's just distortion down there. But this liquid that's in it, when the weather cools down, crystallizes. And it's wonderful, and I love it very much. And Goriki gave me that. That was my first or second throne gift. I can't remember which one, because I've also got that purple squishy cat, which I got from Rich Gay Aunt. So those were the first two that I ever got. The smell is starting to dissipate. I don't even remember what that one was from. Oh my goodness, let's carry on before I get further distracted. Where do we get to on the stamps? It's not important, they are simply things you said. I know! And sometimes they can be so very apt when they're just randomly pulled up. Which Goriki is, because he's just using the quote command, he's not actually saying which number, so it randomizes which one we're going to get. So the stamps. Jill asked for the old red one, and though she did not tell why, yeah, he's just used a specific number now. Quote number 1. My brain, it's just all over the place today. That is always accurate. Very apt. ADHD and autism, all sort of really having a party in there. She did not tell why she wanted it, nor show it put away in the spelling book, a little seal upon a promise made to be kept. Promise made to be kept. End of chapter. It's starting to get warm again. I can hear the bird up in the chimney. I'm going to clip my hair up, so it's probably going to have bits poking out at the side, but it won't be hot on the back of my neck. And then we will carry on reading. Right, 3/4 of an hour to go. Yes, I don't know where my hair slides are. Combs. To keep the side bits out of the way. Chapter 8, Mary and Molly. They were the names of 2 girls. Now let's see how the other missionaries got on with their tasks. Farmer Grant was a thrifty, well-to-do man, anxious to give his children greater advantages than he had enjoyed, and to improve the fine place of which he was justly proud, his house. Mrs. Grant was a notable housewife, as ambitious and industrious as her husband, but too busy to spend any time on the elegancies of life, though always ready to help the poor and sick like a good neighbour and Christian woman. Well, people who aren't Christians also help their neighbours. I'm sorry, they do not have a monopoly on it. There are some Christians who are very foul and don't help anybody, and I think it's really only Christian by self-claimed title, not by anything they demonstrate. So let's ignore that and read the story. The three sons, Tom, Dick, and Harry. Really? Really? PJ's saying, really? Exactly. The three sons, Tom, Dick, and Harry, were big fellows of 17, 19, and 21. So that would be Thomas, Richard, and Henry, because those are usually the short name versions are Tom, Dick, and Harry. Thomas, Richard, and Henry. Would be awful if Christian had a monopoly on kind. Oh, it would be. It would be, especially with a bunch of the people who call themselves Christians. Seriously. No, I'm glad it's not that. Three sons, Tom, Dick, and Harry, were big fellows of 17, 19, and 21. The first two on the farm, and the elder in a store just setting up for himself. Kind-hearted but rough-mannered youths who loved Mary very much, that she's their little sister, but teased her sadly about her fine lady airs, as they called her dainty ways and love of beauty, because they're just rough and tumble boys but are now grown up. And so doing things that more commonly girls liked doing, they think it's hilarious. Mary was a thoughtful girl, full of innocent fancies, refined tastes, and romantic dreams, with which no one sympathized at home, though she was the pet of the family. So she liked these sort of things, but nobody at home was really into it. It did seem to an outsider as if the delicate little creature had got there by mistake, for she looked very like a tea rose in a field of clover and dandelions, whose highest aim in life was to feed cows and help make root beer. Oh, you use dandelions to make root beer? Someone find out, please. When the girls talked over the new society, it pleased Mary very much, and she decided not only to try and love work better, but to convert her family to a liking for pretty things. Oh dear, that's a disaster waiting to happen, as she called her own more cultivated tastes. Pretty things. I will begin at once and show them that I don't mean to shirk my duty, though I do want to be nice, thought she, as she sat at supper one night and looked about her, planning her first move. Oh, no wonder I'm feeling warm. It's 29.6 degrees Celsius here at the moment. I don't know what that is in Fahrenheit, but yeah. Someone can look that up, but I don't have it. I don't even think I've got a thing in commands to do that. So she was planning her first move. Not a very cheering prospect for a lover of the beautiful, certainly, for the big kitchen, though as neat as wax, had nothing lovely in it except a red geranium blooming at the window. Pardon me. Pardon me. That's usually fizzy drink that does that, but the last drink I had, oh no, I had one on top of that. Okay. Nor were the people all that could be desired in some respects, as they sat about the table, shovelling in pork and beans with their knives, drinking tea from their saucers, and laughing out with a hearty haw-haw when anything amused them. Yet the boys were handsome, strong specimens, the farmer a hale, benevolent-looking man, the housewife a pleasant, sharp-eyed matron, who seemed to find comfort in looking often at the bright face at her elbow, with the broad forehead, clear eyes, sweet mouth, and quiet voice that came like music in among the loud masculine ones, or the quick nervous tones of a woman, always in a hurry. In England there's a mead made with, oh yes, that's right, which is apparently like root beer. I have had a drink called dandelion and burdock, which is apparently a very, very, very old-fashioned one. And I remember at the time saying it reminded me a little bit of root beer, And I wonder if that is what this reference is and what you're referring to here. Joltaire, thank you so much. I like that information. Yes, exactly that one. Yeah. I was surprised at how much I enjoyed it, especially because you look at it and the label is dandelion and burdock, which are two plants which most of us these days consider to be weeds, if we even know what they are. And it's like, that's unusual because it's in a proper commercial fizzy drink can, and they still make it, which is great. And there is a shop that I can get it in locally that does sell some imported goods because they buy off an importer, I guess. Not for supply to lots and lots of retail places, but for branches of this particular shop, and that's all. In other words, if they've got it, get it. If they haven't, maybe they'll have it again, sort of place. Mary's face was so thoughtful that evening that her father observed it, for when at home he watched her as one watches a kitten, glad to see anything so pretty, young, and happy at its play. She's the youngest in the family, I think. Is she the one with the little brother? No, she's the youngest in the family. Little daughter has got something about her, something on her mind, I mistrust. Come and tell father all about it, he said, with a sound slap on his broad knee as he turned his chair from the table to the ugly stove where 3 pairs of wet boots steamed underneath, and a great kettle of cider apple sauce simmered above. When I've helped clear up, I'll come and talk. Now, Mother, you sit down and rest. Roxy and I can do everything, answered Mary, patting the old rocking chair so invitingly that the tired woman could not resist, especially as watching the kettle gave her an excuse for obeying. Now, in reality, her helping out like this is going to do more positive more positive effect than trying to make things fancy and pretty, even if she likes them like that. Well, I don't care if I do, for I've been on my feet since 5 o'clock. Be sure you cover things up and shut the buttery door and put the cat down cellar and sift your meal. I'll see to the buckwheats last thing before I go to bed. So covering food so you don't get flies in it, I guess. Shut the buttery door. That's so the cat and flies can't get into the buttery. That's the room where you, slightly cooler room where you store butter and other dairy goods. And put the cat down the cellar. That would be to go rat catching or mouse catching, so it doesn't get into grain and things like that. And sift your meal. That's, you've got flour. When you grind flour and you want to make something with it, if you don't want all the husky part, not the outer husk, that's already got rid of, but the outer shell of the seed, the stuff that makes flour wholemeal, you don't want just straight wholemeal flour. It's quite rough and coarse, and it's a lot of fiber, and it can go straight through you if you have lots and lots of it. So you want to remove some of that. It won't remove all of it. It'll still be more brown flour than, like for brown bread rather than white bread, but it is still a lot healthier than straight white bread. But to make cakes and things, to make them rise, you don't want lots of that flaky fiber in there. And so sifting your meal is probably getting rid of that stuff, I would guess. I'll see to the buckwheats last thing before I go to bed. I don't know what she's doing with her buckwheats. Never heard it as plural. Mrs. Grant subsided with her knitting, for her hands were never idle. Tom tilted his chair back against the wall and picked his teeth with his penknife. Dick got out a little pot of grease to make the boots watertight, and Harry sat down at the small table to look over his accounts with an important air, because he's the one that works in a little shop. For everyone occupied this room, and the work was done in the out kitchen behind. Goody, he's found the limits, is finding the limits of the quotes. Don't forget you can see them on the Stream Elements dashboard too. Because you can see quotes now if you're a moderator or have admin privileges there. You didn't used to be able to. Mary hated clearing up, but dutifully did every distasteful task and kept her eye on careless Roxy till all was in order. I think that might be the cook or something, or maid. And then she gladly went to perch on her father's knee, seeing in all the faces about her the silent welcome they always wore, for The little one, so she must be the kid's sister. Yes, I do want something, but I know you will say it's silly, she began, as her father pinched her blooming cheek. Pinch. Ow. With the wish that his peaches would ever look half so well. Shouldn't wonder if it was a doll now, said Mr. Grant, stroking her head with an indulgent smile. He smiled indulgently while he stroked her head. I have found this before with this author. She has some slightly odd ways of phrasing things. People love her and think that the sun shines out of her nether regions. She's got some rather odd ways of phrasing things and uses some rather specifically regional period wording and phrasing from time to time. Some books it's more so than others, which can really disrupt the flow. Which I'm doing enough as it is. Stroked her head with an indulgent smile as if she was about 6 instead of 15. Why, father, you know I don't. I haven't played with dollies for years and years. No, I want to fix up my room pretty. Like Jill's. I'll do it all myself and only want a few things, for I don't expect it to look as nice as hers. Indignation gave Mary courage to state her wishes boldly, for she knew that the boys would laugh. Though she knew that the boys would laugh. They did, and her mother said in a tone of surprise, Why, child, what more can you want? I'm sure your room is always as neat as a new pin, thanks to your bringing up, and I told you to have a fire there whenever you wanted to. She doesn't want the bare minimum, though, does she? Let me have some old things out of the garret, and I'll show you what I want. It is neat, but so bare and ugly. I hate to be there. I do so love something pretty to look at. And Mary gave a little shiver of disgust as she turned her eyes away from the large, greasy boot Dick was holding up to be sure it was well lubricated all round. So do I, and that's a fact. I couldn't get on without my pretty girl here anyway. Why, she touches up the old place better than a dozen flower pots in full bloom, said the farmer, as his eyes went from the scarlet geranium to the bright young face so near his own. I wish I had a dozen in the sitting-room window. Mother says they're not tidy, but I'd keep them neat, and I know you'd like it, broke in Mary, glad of the chance to get one of the long-desired wishes of her heart fulfilled. So she wants pots of flowers in the living room. I'll fetch you some next time I go over to Ballard's. Tell me what you want, and we'll have a posy bed somewhere round. See if we don't, said her father, dimly understanding what she wanted. I would guess that probably the only thing that they grow is useful things, not ornamental things. If you're going to put effort into something, you want to get something back from it. Now, if Mother says I may fix my room, I shall be satisfied, and I'll do my chores without a bit of fuss, to show how grateful I am, said the girl, thanking her father with a kiss, and smiling at her mother so wistfully that the good woman could not refuse. You may have anything you like out of the blue chest. There's a lot of things there that moths got at after Grandma died, and I couldn't bear to throw 'em or give 'em away. Trim up your room as you like, and mind you don't forget your part of the bargain, answered Mrs. Grant, seeing profit in the plan. I won't. I'll work all the morning tomorrow, and in the afternoon I'll get ready to show you what I call a nice pretty room, answered Mary, looking so pleased it seemed as if another flower had blossomed in the large bare kitchen. She kept her word, and the very stormy afternoon when Jill got into trouble, Mary was working busily at her little bower. In the blue chest she found a variety of treasures, and ignoring the moth holes, used them to the best advantage, trying to imitate the simple comfort with a touch of elegance which prevailed in Mrs. Minott's back bedroom. 3 faded red moreen curtains went up at the windows over the chilly paper shades. Red moreen, I wonder if it's a colour. Moreen. Giving a pleasant glow to the bare walls. A red quilt with white stars, rather the worse for many washings, covered the bed, and a gay cloth covered the table, where a judicious arrangement of books and baskets concealed the spots, the moth holes. The little airtight stove was banished, and a pair of ancient andirons shone in the firelight. Grandma's last and largest braided rug lay on the hearth, and her brass candlesticks adorned the bureau, over the mirror of which was festooned a white muslin skirt tied up with Mary's red sash, So she's draping the white muslin skirt. So it's just lovely drapey fabric with a red sash around it. This piece of elegance gave the last touch to her room, she thought, and was very proud of it, setting forth all her small store of trinkets in a large shell, with an empty scent bottle and a clean tidy over the pincushion. On the walls she hung 3 old-fashioned pictures, which she ventured to borrow from the garret till better could be found. One, a mourning piece, with a very tall lady weeping on an urn in a grove of willows, and 2 small boys in knee breeches and funny little square tails to their coats, looking like cherubs in large frills. The other was as good as a bonfire, being an eruption of Vesuvius, and very lurid indeed, for the Bay of Naples was boiling like a pot, the red sky raining rocks, and a few distracted people lying flat upon the shore. The third was a really pretty scene of children dancing around a maypole, for though nearly 100 years old, the little maids smiled and the boys pranced as gaily as if the flowers they carried were still alive and sweet. Now I'll call them to see and say that it is pretty. Then I'll enjoy it. Oh, so she's expecting them to think it's pretty, what she's done. Oh dear. Then I'll enjoy it and come here when things look dismal and bare everywhere else, said Mary, when at last it was done. She had worked all the afternoon and only finished at supper time, so the candles had to be lighted, that the toilette might look its best and impress the beholders with an idea of true elegance. Unfortunately, the fire smoked a little, and a window was set ajar to clear the room. An evil-disposed gust blew in, wafting the thin drapery within reach of the light. And when Mary threw open the door proudly, thinking to display her success, was horrified to find the room in a blaze and half her labour all in vain. The white muslin on the dresser, candles also on the dresser. The conflagration was over in a minute, however, for the boys tore down the muslin and stamped out the fire with much laughter, while Mrs. Grant bewailed the damage to her carpet, and poor Mary took refuge in her father's arms, refusing to be comforted in spite of his kind commendation of Grandma's fixings. The third little missionary had the hardest time of all, and her first efforts were not much more satisfactory nor successful than the others. Her father was away from morning till night, and then had his paper to read, books to keep, or a man to see downtown, so that after a hasty word at tea he saw no more of the children till another evening, as they were seldom up at his early breakfast. He thought they were well taken care of, for Miss Bathsheba Dawes was an energetic middle-aged spinster when she came into the family, and had been there 15 years, so he did not observe what a woman would have seen at once, that Miss Bat was getting old and careless, and everything about the house was at 6s and 7s, all over the place. She took good care of him, and thought she had done her duty if she got 3 comfortable meals, nursed the children when they were ill, and saw that the house did not burn up. So Maria Louisa and Napoleon Bonaparte got on as they could without the tender cares of a mother. Molly had been a happy-go-lucky child. Maria Louisa, Molly, had been a happy-go-lucky child, contented with her pets, her freedom, and little Boo, Napoleon Bonaparte. Why you would call your child that, I don't know. And Boo, contented with her pets, her freedom, and little Boo to love. But now she was just beginning to see that they were not like other children, and to feel ashamed of it. Papa is busy, but Miss Bat ought to see to us. She's paid for it, and goodness knows she has an easy time now, for if I ask her to do anything, she groans over her bones and tells me young folks should wait on themselves. I take all the care of Boo off her hands, but I can't wash my own things, and he hasn't a decent trouser to his blessed little legs. I'd tell Papa, but it wouldn't do any good. He'd only say, "Yes, child, yes, I'll attend to it," and never do a thing. This used to be Molly's lament when some specially trying event occurred, and if the girls were not there to condole with her, she would retire to the shed chamber, call her 9 cats about her, and sitting in the old bushel basket, pull her hair about her ears and scold all alone. The cats learned to understand this habit, and nobly did their best to dispel the gloom which now and then obscured the sunshine of their little mistress. Some of them would creep into her lap and purr till the comfortable sound soothed her irritation. The sedate elders sat at her feet, blinking with such wise and sympathetic faces that she felt as if half a dozen Solomons were giving her the sagest advice, while the kittens frisked about, cutting up their drollest capers, till she laughed in spite of herself. When the laugh came, the worst of the fit was over, and she soon cheered up, dismissing the consolers with a pat all around, a feast of good things from Miss Bat's larder, and the usual speech, "Well, dears, it's of no use to worry. I guess we shall get along somehow if we don't fret." With which wise resolution Molly would leave her retreat and freshen up her spirits by a row on the river or a romp with Boo, which always finished the case. Now, however, she was bound to try the new plan and do something toward reforming not only the boy's condition, but the disorder and discomfort of home. She could just help out with housework. "I'll play it as Siam, and this is the house of a native, and I'm come to show the folks how to live nicely." Yeah, very old-fashioned. "Miss Bat wouldn't know what to make of it, and I can't tell her, so I shall get some fun out of it anyway," thought Molly as she surveyed the dining room the day her mission began. The prospect was not cheering. And if the natives of Siam lived in such confusion, it is high time they were attended to. The breakfast table still stood as it was left, with slops of coffee on the cloth, bits of bread, eggshells, that was not expected, sorry, bits of bread, eggshells, and potato skins laying about, and one lonely sausage was cast away in the middle of a large platter, so the table hadn't even been cleared. I'm not good at housework, but at least I generally get the table cleared, and others also muck in too. We all do our bit, because we all live in this house. The furniture was dusty, stove untidy, and the carpet looked as if crumbs had been scattered to chickens who declined their breakfast. Boo was sitting on the sofa with his arm through a hole in the cover, hunting for some lost treasure put away there for safekeeping, like a little magpie as he was. Molly fancied she washed and dressed him well enough, but today she seemed to see more clearly, and sighing as she thought of the hard job in store for her if she gave him the thorough washing he needed and combed out that curly mop of hair. Might be better to leave him and actually do some of the housework stuff first. "I'll clear up first and do that by and by. I ought to have a nice little tub and good towels, like Mrs. Minot, and I will too if I buy them myself," she said, piling up cups with an energy that threatened destruction to handles. Miss Bat, who was trailing about the kitchen with her head pinned up in a little plaid shawl, was so surprised by the demand for a pan of hot water and 4 clean towels that she nearly dropped her snuff-box, chief comfort of her lazy soul. "What new whimsy now? Generally the dishes stand round till I have time to pick 'em up, and you're off coasting or careering somewhere. Well, this tidy fit won't last long, so I may as well make the most of it," said Miss Bat as she handed out the required articles, and then pushed her spectacles from the tip of her sharp nose to her sharper black eyes for a good look at the girl, who stood primly before her, with a clean apron on and her hair braided up instead of flying wildly about her shoulders. Was all the comment that Miss Bat made on this unusual neatness, and she went on scraping her saucepans while Molly returned to her work, very well pleased with the effect of her first step. All she's done is moved the mess. She hasn't actually cleaned anything. She's loaded more work on one person who does it, not offered to help. Very pleased with the effect of her first step, for she felt that the bewilderment of Miss Bat would be a constant inspiration to fresh efforts. An hour of hard work produced an agreeable change in the abode of the native, for the table was cleared. Oh, she is doing more. I thought she was asking for the pan and the towels for doing her brother. No, she's cleaning. Changed the abode of the native, for the table was cleared, room swept and dusted, fire brightened, and the holes in the sofa covering were pinned up till time could be found to mend them. To be sure, rolls of lint lay in corners, smears of ashes were on the stove hearth, and dust still lurked on chair rounds and table legs, but too much must not be expected of a new convert, so the young missionary sat down to rest, well pleased and ready for another attempt, as soon as she could decide in what direction it should be made. She quailed before Boo as she looked at the unconscious innocent peacefully playing with the spotted dog, now bereft of his tail, and the lone sausage with which he was attempting to feed the hungry animal whose red mouth always gaped for more. It will be an awful job, and he's so happy I won't plague him yet. I guess I'll go and put my room to rights first and pick up some clean clothes to put on him, if he's alive after I get through with him, thought Molly, foreseeing a stormy passage for the boy, who hated a bath as much as some people hate a trip across the Atlantic. Up she went, and finding the fire out, felt discouraged, though thought she would rest a little more, so retired under the blankets to read one of the Christmas books. The dinner bell rang while she was still wandering happily in Nellie's silver mine, so that would be a story, and she ran down to find that Boo had laid out a railroad all across her neat room, using bits of coal for sleepers and books for rails, over which he was dragging the yellow sled laden with a dismayed kitten, the tailless dog, and the remains of the sausage, evidently on its way to the tomb, for Boo took bites at it now and then, no other lunch being offered to him. "Oh dear, why can't boys play without making such a mess?" sighed Molly, picking up the feathers from the duster which Boo had been trying to make a cocky-do of the hapless dog. So he's trying to put feathers on the dog. He's pulling them out of the duster. "I'll wash him right after dinner, and that will keep him out of mischief for a while," she thought, as the young engineer unsuspiciously proceeded to ornament his already crocky countenance with squash, cranberry sauce, and gravy, till he looked more like a Fiji chief in full war paint than a Christian boy. "I want 2 pails of hot water, please, Miss Bat, and the big tub," said Molly, as the ancient handmaid emptied her 4th cup of tea, for she dined with the family and enjoyed her own good cooking in its prime. "What are you going to wash now?" "Boo, I'm sure he needs it enough," and Molly could not help laughing as the victim added to his brilliant appearance by smearing the colours all together with a rub of 2 grimy hands, making a fine Turner of himself, Turner being a famous landscape artist. "Now, Maria Louisa Bemis, you ain't going to cut up no capers with that child. The idea of a hot bath in the middle of the day, and him full of dinner and croupy into the bargain. Wet a corner of a towel at the kettle spout and polish him off if you like, but you won't risk his life in no bathtubs this cold day." That's actually a very valid point. You don't risk someone catching a chill. No, not necessarily a cold, because a cold is viral. You don't risk someone getting ill because they have been wet and then damp, and they're in a cold room and they are cooling down too fast. Not a good idea. Miss Bat's word was law in some things, so Molly had to submit, and took Boo away, saying loftily as she left the room, "I shall ask father and do it tonight, for I will not have my brother looking like a pig." "My patience, how the Siamese do leave their things around," she exclaimed as she surveyed her room after making up the fire and polishing off Boo. "I'll put things in order and then mend up my rags if I can find my thimble." How the Siamese do leave their things around. So she's blaming her brother and the old lady who's their maid and housekeeper for the mess in her own room. Hi, Coleslaw, great to have you here. Lovely to have you here. Definitely shame. Definitely shame. That one definitely qualifies as let's have a big drink from the shame bottle. She's the one who needs to be doing that work. There you go. I'll put things in order and then mend up my rags. A load of bull. Yeah, it's a load of bullshit. and then mend up my rags if I can find my thimble. Now let me see. And she went to exploring her closet, bureau, and table, finding such disorder everywhere that her courage nearly gave out. She had clothes enough, but all needed care. Even her best dress had 2 buttons off, and her Sunday hat but 1 string. Shoes, skirts, books, and toys lay about, and her drawers were a perfect chaos of soiled ruffles, odd gloves, old ribbons, boot lacings, and bits of paper. Oh, my heart, what a muddle! Mrs. Minot would not think much of me if she could see that, said Molly, recalling how that lady once said she could judge a good deal of a little girl's character and habits by a peep at her top drawer, and went on with great success to guess how each of her schoolmates kept her drawer. Come, missionary, clear up and don't let me find such a glory hole again. Don't know about that phrase. Or I'll report you to the society, said Molly, tipping the whole drawerful out upon the bed, making more mess before she gets some of it tidied up. She should work on a little bit at a time. Oh dear. Tipping the whole drawerful out upon the bed and beguiling the tiresome job by keeping up the new play, imagining her as a missionary. Twilight came before it was done, and a great pile of things loomed up on her table, with no visible means of repair, for Molly's work-basket was full of nuts, and her thimble down a hole in the shed floor where the cats had dropped it in their play. I'll ask Bat for hooks and tape, and Papa for some money to buy scissors and things, for I don't know where mine are, because she hasn't put them away prior. Glad I can't do any more now. Being neat is such hard work. And Molly threw herself down on the rug beside the old wooden cradle in which Boo was blissfully rocking, with a cargo of toys aboard. She watched her time, and as soon as her father had done supper, she hastened to say before he got to his desk, "Please, Papa, I want $1 to get some brass buttons and things to fix Boo's clothes with. He wore a hole in his new trousers coasting down the Kemble steps, and can't I wash him? He needs it, and Mrs. Bat won't let me have a tub." "Certainly, child, certainly. Do what you like, only don't keep me. I must be off, or I shall miss Jackson, and he's the man I want." And throwing down $2 instead of 1, Mr. Bemis hurried away, with a vague impression that Boo had swallowed a dozen brass buttons, and Miss Bat had been coasting somewhere in a bath pan. But catching Jackson was important, so he did not stop to investigate. Armed with paternal permission, Molly carried her point, and oh, what a dreadful evening poor Boo spent. Not a good idea for a small child to go to bed wet, and especially if their hair is wet and it's cold in the middle of winter. First he was decoyed upstairs an hour too soon, then put in a tub by main force and sternly scrubbed, in spite of shrieks that brought Miss Bat to the locked door to condole with the sufferer, scold the scrubber, and depart, darkly prophesying croup before morning. Lots of coughing. "He always howls when he's washed, but I shall do it since you won't, and he must get used to it. I will not have people tell me he's neglected if I can help it," cried Molly, working away with tears in her eyes, for it was as hard for her as it was for Boo, but she meant to be thorough for once in her life, no matter what happened. When the worst was over, she coaxed him with candies and stories till the long task of combing out the curls was safely done. Then, in the clean nightgown with a blue button newly sewn on, she laid him in bed, worn out, but sweet as a rose. "Now, say your prayers, darling, and go to sleep with the nice red blanket all tucked round you so you won't get cold," said Molly, rather doubtful of the effect of the wet head. "No, I won't. Going to sleep now." And Boo shut his eyes wearily, feeling that his late trials had not left him in a prayerful mood. "Then you'll be a real little heathen, as Mrs. Peck called you, and I don't know what I shall do with you," said Molly, longing to cuddle rather than scold the little fellow whose soul needed looking after as well as his body. Actually, no, he's probably better if she just gives him a cuddle rather than tries to make him right. No, I won't be a heathen. I don't want to be throwed to the crocodiles. "I will say my prayers. Oh, I will." And rising in bed, Boo did so with the devotion of an infant Samuel, for he remembered the talk when the society was formed. Molly thought her labours were over for the night, and soon went to bed, tired with her first attempts, But toward morning she was wakened by the hoarse breathing of the boy, and was forced to patter away to Miss Bat's room, humbly asking for the squills and confessing that the prophecy had come to pass. I don't know what a squill is. I knew it. Bring the child to me and don't fret. I'll see to him, and next time you do as I say, was the consoling welcome she received as the old lady popped up a sleepy but anxious face in a large flannel cap and shook the bottle with the air of a general who had routed the foe before and meant to do it again. Leaving her little responsibility in Miss Bat's arms, Molly retired to her wet pillow with a few remorseful tears and to fall asleep, wondering if real missionaries ever killed their pupils in the process of conversion. So the girls all failed in the beginning, but they did not give up and succeeded better next time, as we shall see. And that's the end of the chapter. Oh my goodness. When they try so hard to improve other people, they should be working on themselves, honestly. Just because that makes a lot more sense, doesn't it? Lead by example. Encourage others to join in with you. And when it comes to tidying things up and sorting it, do the stuff that's on the surface right where you are at the moment and work your way across into the other things. Don't make a whole new mess pile. Anyway, so we're not going to go any further today since it's 10 to 3 and the next chapter is 3 times that length. Just based on the size of the font on the page of the books that I read on this hand-me-down iPad mini. It takes about a minute a page on average. And so therefore, if it's a 30-page chapter to go, because I stop at the end of a chapter, I don't stop partway through a chapter unless it's a really, really long one and it's a natural conclusion at that point. I have done that once or twice before, but not normally. It's harder to pick up again too, and find the right place on the page. So the next chapter will be next time, which is in 3 days' time, chapter 9, The Debating Club. Okay, don't know how that's going to work compared with all the rest of it, but there you have it. I think I'm remembering now why I'm really not a mad keen fan of Louisa May Alcott stories. They tend to be a little bit more preachy. Has always been the feel that I've got from them. Hydrate, yes, that's a very good idea. We shall all do that now. Coleslaw, thank you so much for that reminder. We are all hydrating, and I'd like to see those confirmations that that is happening too in chat. And also, bend and stretch. We all need a little bit of movement because we've all been sitting still for ages. Oh, cramp. Stretch the wrong way. And snacks, says Goriki. Oh, that's what he's having. Stretching sideways. It's always a good idea. And don't forget your hands. If you are working on a computer, you need to stretch your hands out. You don't have to do it this way, but you need to stretch your hands out and tighten them and stretch them out and tighten them and stretch them out and loosen them up. Because if you sit there with your hands all hooked up like this all the time, it's not good for the joints, and you end up with muscles that just sort of lock in place. So it's a good idea to give those a good stretch and a little bit of a wiggle round too. So there you go. Shoulders, all of that sort of stuff. Do not do the whole sort of run your head round in circles with it really leaned over. I have a physio friend who I started to do that one day and she stopped me immediately. She says, don't do that. If you rotate your head while you're leaning it outwards, leaning it down, there's actually a very small bone in your spine where you can snap it, where the two pieces go past each other. A normal size bit of bone in this other one, and you can break one. not a good idea. It's better to stretch by doing that with your head forward and back, and come back to center, and then side to side, not rotate it round. And you can put it down at the different angles in between, but don't, no. Physio for a long time, so definitely not. You can't fall over if you're lying on the floor. That is a good quote. Yes, you can't fall over if you're lying on the floor. Unless you're on a boat and the boat gets tipped over. And then, it's not actually quite the same, is it? No. Anyway, so there you go, folks. We will see you all again next time. We'll be having some more of the story. I do know that sometime next week, I'm just going to look at my calendar here. Probably a week today, the next Disney Dreamlight Valley free update will have dropped. It's scheduled for the 11th of February, which means that because of my time zone, it's actually my 12th, which is a Thursday. So the next stream after that I have is actually the Friday, the 13th, which is a week from today. So I will possibly be streaming Dreamlight Valley in a week's time. I'm not sure otherwise if this book is slightly longer than that, because I don't know how long this thing is. We are... Oh, no, I've got to unlock it again. I'm just going to tell you how far through we are. 190 of 631. How far is that? Let's do some calculator maths. Pull up my calculator. 190 of... What is that? It was 631. 631. So we're 30% of the way through. Yeah, 30% of the way through. Not even a third of the way through. We're over quarter of the way through. So it's a long book. Why does it have to be so long? I think I prefer the adventure stories and the fun fairy tale style ones. Not necessarily weird fairy tale ones, but like magic ones, like the Edith Nesbit ones. I'm remembering again why, and other reasons why I'm not really Ms. Alcott's books. I know other people love them, but why when I read a book, I want to be entertained by it rather than, oh my goodness, are we ever going to get there? Oh yeah, okay, there's the lesson I have to learn for it. I don't read high literature. It's very obvious. I don't read high literature. I am not a literature consumer. I like relaxed, casual, fun, informative. I do sometimes read thrillers. It depends on my energy levels as to whether I can read them, but not usually the ones where there is no hope in them and everything is bad ending all the time. I want to know that the story is going to get resolved. I want to feel like we have some resolution, because there's enough horrible stuff goes on in the world between people, at people, natural disasters, all that sort of stuff. So reading for me is a break from all of that sort of stuff. And so therefore I look for, personally, when I'm reading, I look for stuff that is going to provide me entertainment, some lightheartedness, that sort of thing. And the same goes with watching stuff online. If I'm watching TV, but we don't have a TV. Not a dreary one. So when we finish this book, the next book I read is intentionally going to be something that has a little bit more adventure or fun to it. It might be something with a little bit of head banging, as in banging our heads against a brick wall. But it's more likely to be an adventure story than okay. But we are going to read this one. We are going to read it. We'll get there, and we'll see you all next time. Look after yourself. Stay really well hydrated, okay? And if you have any possibility of ever getting kidney stones, make sure you drink lots of water. Not water with stuff in it, water, because it will help you to deal with kidney stones. That's not medical advice, that's life experience advice, suggestions, tips. Take it with with your own grains of salt, okay? I shall take care, and you guys do too. Look forward to seeing, yes, I am healing well. I haven't had any major pain for a wee while, probably about a week, which is good. There was some niggly stuff back then, but we're doing well at the moment. So, but it's one of those things, kidney stones, you don't know if you're going to get another one happening or not, because there might be a collection of them there that just sort of release over time. Whatever, at least I know what's going on now. Look after yourselves, stay well hydrated, be kind to yourself, because out of the overflow of you and how